Arleta, welcome to TVP World and thank you for taking the time.
Good evening. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Good evening. It's a pleasure. Now, Arleta, there is something about the Wall Street Journal headline that caught my attention, and I'll read it to you word for word. Putin didn't directly order Alexei Navalny's February death. US spy agencies fined. This was the Wall Street Journal of the 27th of April. Now, the word that concerns me is the word directly. Well, that's not surprising, isn't it? You don't expect Putin to pick the phone up to the prison governor and say, get rid of Navalny. I mean, it would be done indirectly, wouldn't it?
If you think about it this way, yes, Putin could not do it directly. It would be through 30 persons maybe, and this word directly can be concerning because I read this article, I read what Navalny's allies, co-workers wrote, and they think that maybe it is needed to Biden administration to show some goodwill because they still hope to have Ivan Gershkovich, Wall Street Journal journalist, who is imprisoned in Russia and who, according to other sources, according to Vladimir Putin, what he said, he was supposed to be exchanged for Navalny. That's why this is what Navalny's allies think, that maybe this whole publication is needed so these talks about this exchange could be renewed.
Yes, I mean, you mentioned the prisoner exchange, and I want to talk about that in just a second, but we're joined by our second guest tonight, Mr. Franak Viačorka. He's advisor to Svetlana Tsikhanouskaya, leader of Free Belarus. Welcome, Franak. Hello.
Hello, good evening. Yes,
right, good evening. Just checking the audio there. So we were just, Arleta was just sharing her insights into the Wall Street Journal headline. We were talking about the use of the word directly and whether or not Putin was directly involved. But what Arleta was saying, I'm not sure if you heard it, was that this was basically a sign of goodwill from the US to help with the release of an American journalist being held in Russia. What are your thoughts?
So it doesn't mean that Putin is not guilty, that there was no direct order to kill Alexei Navalny. We know from Belarus regime there are at least 6 political prisoners who were killed in less than 1 year by Lukashenko's regime, and probably even if Lukashenko did not order directly to kill them, it's still his responsibility, because it's up to dictators and the administration to decide what kind of treatment they receive, what kind of freedom they have, can they communicate to their relatives, can they have medical aid. So definitely Putin is responsible for Navalny's death. And why this information appeared right now, I actually agree that might be some game behind the scene, we don't know for sure. But I'm still, let me emphasize, Putin is guilty.
Well, at the end of the day, Arleta, I'm sure you would agree, the responsibility stops with Putin. But let's go back to Navalny's history. As an opponent of Putin, there have been 3 attempts on his life. The third one, of course, the final and successful one. The first was the spraying of green paint with some noxious substances, which made him blind, 80% blind in his right eye. The second, poisoning with Novichok, which is an extremely poisonous substance and only available after approval from the Kremlin. So surely Putin's hands are all over the death.
That's this is something that shouldn't be even discussed, because Alexei Navalny was moved to this colony in very difficult conditions because they were torturing him. He was in this one-man cell in conditions we could not even imagine in European prisons. So they did everything to break him as a politician. They couldn't do it. What is very strange is that the day before his death, we could see him. He was not directly in court, but he was online in court. But he was joking with the judge. He was smiling. He was very vivid, and he didn't look like he was dying. And the next day, we heard this news that Alexei Navalny is dead. That was really, really strange. Of course, I can imagine that something unexpected happened, and that's why Alexei Navalny died. But still, it's Putin's fault. It is Putin's regime's fault, because he was in conditions like that.
Well, absolutely. I think there's no dispute over that. Franak, if I can ask you your opinion on the following. There was due to be a prisoner exchange with a Russian KGB or FSB assassin who had been convicted and held in Germany for Alexei Navalny. And this was due to happen a few days after Navalny's death. Why do you think Putin wanted Navalny dead, despite having agreed to the exchange?
For me, it's always hard to explain the behavior of the dictators. It's very hard to explain actions of Putin and Lukashenko. They are very irrational in general. Why? The same question is why Putin started the war against Ukraine, criminal war against Ukraine, without any single reason for doing that. Why he is killing every day so many people? It could be some emotional will, perhaps to take revenge on his opponent, or it might be also some wish of his cronies, of Putin's cronies, to show their power. We don't know for sure, but definitely there was this discussion on exchange. Navalny's team confirmed this fact, but was it the genuine willingness to have this exchange, or was it just some some performance to create the noise, and to hide the crimes of Putin's regime? We don't know. Perhaps they didn't intend to release Navalny, and it was just the play that they are playing together with the secret services of Russia.
Right. Well, certainly, something similar has been suggested by someone very close to Alexei Navalny's camp group. That Putin said, "Well, okay, we've got agreement from Germany for the exchange. We'll get rid of Navalny and replace him with someone else, perhaps the American journalist, in exchange for the FSB assassin." That may well be Putin's thinking, but as we say, very difficult to assess. Arleta, we know Russia's very, very good at the dissemination of disinformation. Do you think that might have been in play here, influencing the opinion of the US spy agencies?
Of course, this is what Russia is doing, not for the last 2 years. This is what Russia is doing for the last 20 years. And Putin understood very early that disinformation is his weapon as well. And he's trying to influence other politicians, other societies. And maybe this is also the case. We can never 100% believe what they are saying is true, never. And I think that everyone all over the world should know that already. It was many times when Putin was openly lying. I mean, Crimea, when he was saying that there is no Russian soldiers then, he was saying that he's not going to attack Ukraine. And what he did, we saw what he did. So that's why every time they say something, we should try to understand what is behind that, but I wouldn't say that we can believe what they are saying. So maybe this is some kind of the game. Maybe there was an intention to make this prisoner exchange. Maybe there was not. Maybe they tried to give some hope to European politicians, and then they said, no, okay, we can give you this hope, we can take this hope back. These are very, very strange games.
Well, they certainly seem to be in line, probably, with the FSB doctrine, spycraft, perhaps, to keep your opponent unbalanced. Would you agree, Franak?
Yeah, absolutely. It might be games, behind behind the scenes. Putin in general, he's trying right now to test the limits of the Western democracies. He's checking the readiness of Western democracies to resist Putin's imperial behavior right now. This is why they are doing so many provocations right now in the informational space, together with Lukashenko. And I think right now it's a high moment for the Western democracies just to unite, to confront Putin's and Lukashenko's regime together, and not to buy their promises, not to buy their guarantees, always put under question everything dictators are saying, and that's the only approach, to stay united against tyranny.
Well, the sooner that happens, I suspect many people would agree. Arleta, I want to move on now to the 2 Russian journalists that have been arrested and are being kept in pre-trial detention for a minimum of 2 months. And they were arrested for contributing to a YouTube channel, and they were arrested under extremist legislation. What can you share about this?
I will only add to Alexei Navalny case one more thing, that I agree with Navalny's team that if Putin's regime had any proofs that Navalny died, they would show cameras, they would show everything. They didn't show it, and that's also strange. And if we talk about these journalists that were doing some job for Navalny's channel on YouTube, this is not a surprise. They were arrested like any other journalist, Russian, especially Russian journalists. I mean, Evan Gershkovich was not Russian, but Russian journalists that are trying to do really independent job. They know that they can be arrested every day, and this arrests and this, I mean, for how many years they can go to prison and for how many years people go to prison is ridiculous. I mean, for example, Sasha Skoczylenko, she's an activist, but she sticked 5 stickers in some shopping mall on some products. These were anti-war stickers, and she's in prison for 7 years. So this is the work of a really high risk, and they knew it, but they were for sure people of great courage that they were still trying to do their job.
Well, there's no doubt about that. Very, very courageous people indeed. The response of the authorities, of course, is shocking but not surprising, considering Putin's attitude towards the media in general over many years. So, Franak, just very, very quickly, how do you see the possibility of some kind of opposition to Putin in the future? Any chance of that at all?
Chances are there, but right now we see, unfortunately, majority of Russian citizens inside Russia, they support the war, which is very unfortunate. But we also see brave Russians, mostly in exile, who are supporting the struggle against Putin. Not only Navalny's team, there are many Russians who are doing a great job, who are supporting Ukraine as well. But first of all, we must focus on helping Ukraine to win, to defeat Russia.
Absolutely.
I think more successful Ukraine is, more resistance in Russia will appear.
I think many would agree with that sentiment. Thank you both very, very much for coming along and sharing your insights with our audience. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much.